I think what most people have to think about now is that, technology is a great enabler for helping us do a lot of things around learning, but only if they're used in the right way. And I guess I'd start with saying it's never a great idea. And I know people have said this for years now. It's not a great idea to choose your technology and then build your strategy around the technology. So I think what we tried to do in the book is highlight 5 different up and coming technologies that you could include in your technology ecosystem. And I think this is a new term that we'll hear. Some people are already using it, but we'll hear it more and more. And that is that in the old days, you're right, we used to have a learning management system, and that would be great for tracking participation rates of what classroom training or what formal e-learning people were doing. But the LMS is no longer sufficient, and it might be part of your learning ecosystem. But, in addition to that, you probably have a lot of other technologies that are helping people learn. So I think the goal is how do you glue them all together and have them work with each other? Because one of the later chapters that we talk about is around data analytics, talent analytics, and how important that's going to be to the future of learning and work. So when you think about a technology ecosystem, let's take some things in particular. For example, I work for Degreed, which is a learning experience platform company, which can help you do a lot of things through learning, and including discovering, tracking, measuring your learning, figure out what your skill gaps are, help you fill those gaps, and then use data and analytics to tell your learning story. But to your point, then say you want to use learning for more application of learning. So there's a chapter devoted to a technology called Practice, for example, that is a video-based platform that allows people to actually, once they learn some skills, to actually videotape them themselves to see how they're actually practicing that skill, and then share those videos with their peers to get feedback, and then reflect on that feedback and then try again. It's what we call in the book a simple learning loop, where you're gaining, information, you're practicing, you're getting feedback, you're reflecting, and then you're doing it all over again. So Practice is another technology that you might put in your technology ecosystem. And I'll give one more example, and I think this is one well. Sam Herring's company, Intrepid, which is doing internal MOOC-like programs to help teams work together to solve real business problems. And so, we could talk more about that, but I mean, the idea though is that you have, depending on what your strategy is, you then build a learning technology ecosystem where all of these technologies are connected and working together, and then you get data from all of them, so you can actually know more about what your learners are doing and what skills they're building, and if they're actually getting ready for the future.
I mean, I've seen some great applications of AI to help coach people around like public speaking, for example. There's a great application called Ori, which gives you real-time feedback on your speaking capability, which I really like. And it's really it's not a leap of too big a leap of imagination to imagine those kind of assistive technologies really helping with some of the harder aspects of learning, like the kind of repetition that you have to do to really study and so on and so forth. It's quite promising. One thing about Degreed that's really interesting to me, and I think one of the really interesting things that's sort of fundamental to the approach. I've worked a lot in the for-profit learning space, and there's an interesting dynamic there that the immediate beneficiary of learning is the individual, right? They're the ones who get the skill and capability, and hopefully the enjoyable experience of learning. But you also have to have a value proposition for the purchaser, right? And what I like about Degreed is it treads both. It addresses those personas. Both those personas. It's when you visit the site, it's curated based on you as an individual learner or you as somebody who's organizing learning at an organizational level. Can you just talk a little bit about the sort of basic philosophy of the Degreed platform, and maybe touch on this concept that I read about called jailbreaking the degree?
Right. Yeah. Degreed is, I think, as I mentioned before, I think we're kind of creating a new category of learning technology. And originally this notion of jailbreaking the degree was saying, look, if we look more broadly at our education system, the fact that we rely so much on what people do with getting a 4-year degree and then bringing that
Uh-huh.
into the workforce and that's how people hire people, right? When most hiring managers will look at a resume and say, where did they go to school? What degree did they get? And what companies did they work for before? And that's kind of the high level screening that we've got from people. But the reality is that doesn't really tell you a whole lot about what people know or what they know how to do. And if you ask, it's like if you ask somebody, tell me about your education, it doesn't matter whether and you, for example, asked me about my education. I told you where I got both of my degrees, and sure, I learned some skills, and I am applying some of those skills on my job. But think about all the
What happened
learning that
since
you've
then? Yeah.
done beyond your degree or since your degree. Right? I mean, and it's like asking somebody, tell me about your health, and they say I ran a marathon 10 years ago. But that doesn't really tell you what they've done lately in terms of their health. So that's the idea about jailbreaking the degree. It's about saying, that expertise, you can get expertise in so many ways, yet we're not giving people credit for that. And so it's not about saying that the 4-year degree is no longer valid or is even going to become obsolete. I think that it's still a great foundation for learning. It's just saying that that's not the end of it. And now we're seeing that, and it may not even be the beginning of it. And realistically, we're seeing all of these companies right now who are saying, for certain jobs, do we even really need a 4-year degree? And if you went to school and you got a 4-year degree, what about if you went 2 years? You don't get any credit for going to a higher education for 2 years, at least in the United States. So there's different paths to expertise. And then if you do decide that you want to get a foundational 4-year degree, I know my son graduated from college about 2 years ago, and I'll tell you that college degree, and it's the same for everyone in the workforce, is not going to sustain you for the entirety of your career like maybe it used to. So this idea that you'll have to continuously build skills throughout your career. Like my son who's entered the workforce, he's now learning a whole new set of skills, even 2 years into the workforce. And for mid-career workers and for workers in an older demographic who decide that they don't want to retire, that they want to work longer because they either want to or have to, everyone's going to have to continue to build skills throughout
Got it.
their careers. And so that's the
It's
idea of
right. So
breaking
really
the
a
degree.
lifelong learning message, and I get it. I totally get it. And I think companies are using the fact that they will continue to educate you now as a competitive differentiator in hiring from kids out of college and so on and so forth. So I think that message is really landing. On the one hand, I really love the personal accountability and the sort of empowerment message in Degree. That's like putting people in charge of their own learning and allowing them to free range across assets inside and outside the firewall. Um, on the other hand, as chief learning officer or kind of learning leader, talent leader in an organization, I really need to make sure that there's sort of directional alignment, right? And that we often do a lot of our learning in support of a strategy or a pivot in strategy or a transformation, so on and so forth. And then the direction of workplace productivity software is increasingly about collaboration. And I wonder if this sort of like driving, if I was cynical, I might say that driving the responsibility to the individual is a little bit abdicating responsibility, a bit like, kind of in the old days, we used to just buy a stack of training libraries and let people loose. How do you feel about the individual focus versus teaming focus?
No, I think that's a great question. And I meant to also address that as part of part of the flat platform when you
Yeah.
were mentioning that before, that, when you're because it's all connected. If we think about this, right, it's that there's an individual person that has, a certain set of skills, a certain level of expertise, that has personal ambitions and aspirations about what they want to do with their careers. And then you have, and so partly, how can you provide a personalized learning experience for people to help them think about their careers, how they get better at the job that they have, how they think about getting ready for the next job or their dream job. So that's all on the personalized level. And I think we haven't I think we don't give enough credit to our employees that they can actually
Think for themselves.
think like that and actually have. Right, right. I mean, people will do a lot more if you let them. We've kind of had, I think, the reins on them, saying, oh no, we need to spoon feed you. We need to tell you exactly what you need to
Yeah.
learn and when you need to learn it. And that's, again, part of that antiquated model that we've taken from the university system and brought it into corporate America, that this is how learning is done. It's lecture based and that, and we're going to tell you what you need to learn. And that's going to, be tied to your performance and then maybe to a promotion. And those models are just so outdated and not effective. I mean, research will show you a time and time and time again how demotivating that is and how ineffective it is, yet we keep doing it. So on the one hand, I
can
would
confess,
say,
Kelly, that I am personally accountable for the most insanely granular specifying of required training. And at the time was very proud of the ability to do that. And in retrospect, think I maybe did a terrible thing. But I think there's one thing that I wanted that your comment there sort of made me think of, and this is around curation. Curation is a very popular topic now amongst our peers and people in our sector. And in many respects, curation has always been the work of instructional designers and educators, right? To build a curriculum, to build a learning path, to select topics and sort of craft a program. But the world has changed so much in terms of the volume of information that's produced and available. And there's such a rich set of information. If you think about MOOCs, for example, there's just an overwhelming amount of things that you can go do. Do you think that it's still useful to curate, or should we be really just teaching people to curate for themselves?
I think it's both, and if I could just make one comment about
Yeah, sure.
the last question you had around, are we abdicating responsibility? And I think that, yeah, so I actually wanted to just mention that, because people listening might say, okay, it is all about the personalized learning, it's all about the learner, but I would say it's twofold. I think that there's a responsibility at the organizational level to provide some guidance and direction about the strategy of the company and where they're going, and to have some strategic initiatives that will help. So, for example, if you know at your company that data science and data analytics is going to be incredibly important for your company moving forward, let's state that, and then let's put programs together that can upskill and reskill people to do that. So I think that there's a part for both, the company and the individual to play, and any learning strategy should have that two-pronged approach, because when it comes together, it's beautiful. And now this segues into, the curated content comment, where again, I think that I would say it's the same thing. It's like there are times when we would, why are we curating content in the first place? Because people are feeling overwhelmed with the amount of content and information that's available. So learning people can play a huge role in saying, look, I'm going to spend some time to curate the best content. So if you have a strategic initiative around data science or data analytics, I'm going to curate some of the best content so that people don't have to wonder, where they could find that if they want to go and go through a curated content pathway. But what we're seeing a lot of companies do is say, let's not limit who provides learning to everyone to just the people in L&D. Let's open it up to everyone, to all employees. And so subject matter, and we've done this before in a different way. Like a lot of times learning people will go to subject matter experts to figure out how they curate content. What about just giving it over to subject matter experts and saying, you've got expertise in this
Yes,
area.
yes.
Can you curate a content pathway, to help people learn your area of expertise? And then all of a sudden your company becomes a learning organization